Transcontinental Railroad, travel, commerce, immigration, and communication will never be the same. All aboard! Join me on the journey of how the first Transcontinental Railroad became a turning point in history. We'll be stopping at important points along the way. Let's get those wheels turning. Before our first stop, let me remind you that travel was not quite this simple before this monumental achievement. On and on we went. We had 2 deaths on the road, a baby and an old man. They were buried by the roadside. On the last days before the Great Salt Lake Valley, we had a hard struggle up the Big Mountain. Every few minutes we'd have to stop, pick up rocks, and place them underneath the wagon wheels so they wouldn't roll back. It was so steep that the oxen couldn't hold them. It was 5 miles high, uphill, and I carried my baby the whole way. Now, contrast that with this article. With the railroad, you are sitting back as the train takes you up the mountain. Instead of several hard months of walking, deaths along the way, the railroad transforms travel and mobility. The 6-month journey is reduced to less than a week. Travel is 85% cheaper, and mail, business, and communication all became simpler and more cost-effective. Towns have sprung up all along the way. It began with the desire to connect our growing country. Connect our country, connect the world. Yet, people thought the railway was impossible. Too harsh terrain and too grand of a distance. I knew the railway was possible. People call me crazy, Judah. Crazy thinking I could build a railroad through the Sierra Nevada mountain range with its peaks as high as 14,000 feet, 400 feet long. My surveys and research showed the way. I just needed the money. I approached some businessmen known as the Big Four: Crocker, Huntington, Stanford, and Hopkins. Together, we created the Central Pacific Railroad Company. But to make this railroad a reality, I needed government help. Off to Congress I went. Next stop, Congress. People thought Judah's ideas were too far-fetched and would cost too much money. Yet I, Abraham Lincoln, could see the advantages of having a great railway for our military and our economy. I told Congress, a railroad is imperatively demanded in the interest of the whole country. The government ought to render immediate and efficient aid in its construction. On July 1st, 1862, I signed the Pacific Railway Act. It was the means to make the railway happen. The telegraph, too. It formed the Union Pacific, and along with the Central Pacific, they would build a great railway linking our nation, meaning somewhere in the middle. This started the greatest race in American history, one filled with greed, exploitation, and discrimination. It was hard work working in the blistering prairie heat. We left Ireland to escape the potato famine, and we found ourselves here, being labeled as drunkards. We lived in fear of the Native American attacks. The Native Americans were just defending their lands. Congress had granted land to the railroad companies that was not legally under its control. On August 6, 1867, Cheyenne Chief Turkeyfoot and his men derailed a train near Plum Creek, Nebraska, killing several workers. UP engineer Dodge gave the government an option. We either clean the Indian out or give up. 5,000 soldiers were sent to protect the workers. General William T. Sherman said, "The more Indians we kill this year, the less we'll have to kill next year." The plan: you kill the buffalo, and you kill the Indian. The Plains Indians depended on the buffalo for food, shelter, and clothing. The buffaloes killed almost to extinction forever, impacting the natives' way of life. On the other side of the country, the Central Pacific had its own set of problems: too harsh terrain and too few workers. Charles Crocker, the construction supervisor, suggested they hire the Chinese. His foreman, Strobridge, said, "No way. They are too small and too weak to handle such hard work." Crocker responded, saying, "They built the Great Wall of China, didn't they?" thought we couldn't do it. We showed them. We did so well, we ended up being more than 80% of their workforce. When it came time to tackle the laying the tracks over the highest peaks or the blasting through the tunnels, who did they turn to? Us. Chiseling our way through the hardest granite on the continent, we made only 7 inches of progress a day. It was hard and dangerous work. People said we had Chinese courage. It did take courage to be dropped off steep cliffs, hanging in baskets by ropes. We had to place the explosive and light the fuse. If we weren't raised quick enough, we would die. We also faced blizzards, avalanches, snow record up to 40 feet, freezing temperatures too. We worked in unfair conditions. We were only paid $25 a month. White workers were paid $35. If we increased, we always made more. And when we rebelled and went on strike, you know what they did? They cut off all of our resources. No in or out for a week. Starving, and without resources, many of us had no choice but to return to work. The race intensified as both companies reached Utah territory. Both sides asked Brigham Young, the leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons, to help supply workers. He said, "Speaking of the completion of the railroad, I am anxious to see it, and say to Congress, hurry up, hasten the work, we want to hear the iron horse puffing through this valley. What for? To bring our brethren and sisters here." With the last push, both sides raced to meet at Promontory Summit in Utah territory. Celebrations were planned across the nation for the railway that would unite ideas, peoples, and industry. Yet, as you can see along with the positive impacts, there was a dark side. The railroad was built on the back of exploited labor, discrimination, cost of lands, and ways of life. On May 10, 1869, the last spike was driven, wrapped in telegraph wire that wind struck, announced to the world that history had been made. D-O-N-E. Done. The first Transcontinental Railroad, a turning point in history.